Right, so who's for a good news story then? Sit tight, let's have story time. Despite all these oil and gas licenses being granted by Rishi Sunak to the North Sea oil and gas drilling companies, the one thing the people of Lancashire, or any of us actually, won't have to look forward to anymore are flames coming from their water taps, the water tables being poisoned, and earthquakes rattling bears in the neighbours' windows because fracking is officially over. Hooray! The only two shale gas wells in the country are being shut down for good. Now, aside from being a Jacob Rees-Mogg wet dream fantasy that he brings up on a semi-regular basis, fracking has been beset with problems for all of the aforementioned reasons, and significant weight has been lent to the argument to pack it in, where other countries have banned it completely for the obvious damaging reasons it causes, destroying environments, drinking water resources, and destabilising the ground beneath our feet. However, there might be a Grant Shapps shaped sting in the tail here. The reason this has finally been finished off, which I'll come on to in a moment. But first, the good news, though. Let's celebrate the good news and how it came to this point. Now, Lancashire is home to the original fracking project. When drill company Cuadrilla showed up in Field just outside Blackpool in 2011 and did some test drilling at a place called Priest Hall, that triggered two minor earthquakes in Blackpool, so they hurriedly packed that in and went elsewhere. Shh, don't tell anyone. Well, most of the media didn't, so they could carry on and persevere. And along they came to Preston New Road, still in Field, in 2014. But David Cameron, he loved this idea of all this lovely fracking and all this gas that can be released and how wonderful it will be. And Cuadrilla duly got on with causing absolute chaos with significant protests. Remember, people being arrested, being charged, placards being held up, the police marching people away. And this included local politicians even. In fact, the leader of the Green Party group on Lancashire County Council, Gina Dowding, was one of those cuffed and taken away. She ended up being convicted of obstruction for daring to stand up for the environment, along with a dozen others, back in 2017 for opposing all of this. But when was the last time you saw a politician from any of the main parties get arrested then? Never. Corbyn, when he got done for opposing apartheid, that famous black and white photograph, maybe. He still had colour in his hair back then. Anyway, I've digressed. There was out for years over this Preston New Road activity, opposition and activism against the drilling for years, until finally in August 2019, a moratorium was passed to stop it all after increasingly significant earth tremors were being identified and directly linked to hydraulic fracturing of the shale rock in order to release the national gas locked up within it. The last one measured 2.9 on the Richter scale, and they were getting steadily bigger, and that was certainly enough to be noticeably felt. So that was it for the Oil and Gas Authority as it then was. They shut her down on the basis the earth tremors couldn't be predicted, and it was just too risky to continue with it. And by November, the then Johnson-led government, surprising for him, shut down all further exploration too. That's not to say Cuadrilla just took this moratorium on the chin. They've been fighting it ever since, trying to string it all out in the courts in the hope that somebody would reopen the site. And they nearly got their wish last year, as the idiot Liz, that his truss was all for reopening and reinstigating fracking at Preston New Road, because of the very arguments associated lobbyists were making to her. We need the gas. We're at the mercy of Putin, and you don't want that, do you, Liz? That's our energy security is depending on all of this coming out, yada, yada, yada. Where Truss might have been utterly sucked in by this and have restarted fracking, though, she didn't last long enough to see it done. And Sunak, as soon as he came in, put the 2019 moratorium on fracking back in place. And now the final nail in the coffin has been driven in, however, as the North Sea Transition Authority has issued Cuadrilla with plug and abandonment notices. Already, Cuadrilla have attempted to string this out again and have won an agreed extension from Lancashire County Council until summer 2025 to complete the work of returning the area to its original state, removing any trace of their presence and putting it back to the agricultural field it once was. Now, this North Sea Transition Authority, well, if I told you they were a private company, you might be surprised. Trying to think how to imagine one company telling another to pack up your toys and go home with all the weight of the law behind them, able to do so. But actually, this private company replaced the Oil and Gas Authority last year. Also, incidentally, a limited company as that was. And its powers encompass the administration of licenses for oil and gas exploration, as well as a new duty it's been given since it basically changed its name, to maximise economic recovery of oil from the North Sea. But the reason they have all this authority, this power over Cuadrilla, is because the shares in said company are owned entirely by the Secretary of State for Energy and Net Zero, who just happens to be the little spiv Grant Shapps. Shapps, we know, is absolutely besotted with draining every drop of oil and gas from the North Sea, and this final decision on fracking has likely been taken on the basis the government see the North Sea as more of a sure thing and without all the legal wrangles that have stymied fracking in Lancashire. I don't believe for one moment they've done this for environmental or ecological or social reasons. Maybe it's to do with wanting to hang on to some of these red wall seats they won in that area. Or they simply just can't be bothered with it when they're determined to extend North Sea operations instead. Ultimately, it's still a fossil fuel addiction. They haven't moved away from the idea of fracking with any kind of environmental or climatic thinking in their heads, because they're absolutely against that, and Rishi Sunak is completely uninterested in it. And even this is a stupid idea when it takes years to make a new oil or gas well economic profitable, when renewable alternatives can be up and running in 6 months and the energy they produce is 11 times cheaper. It is not a matter of no energy security to stay in the North Sea nor to frack. It all costs more than cleaner alternatives, and we need a government that will move away from this finite planet-wrecking resource. We're windy as all get out, not least in Parliament, which is easily the largest source of hot air in the country, but geographically too. We're an island as well, with miles and miles and miles of coastline, and yet the investment in tidal energy never materialises. We're led by greedy idiots in the thrall of the fossil fuel lobby, funded by them there or thereabouts, no doubt, and we need fewer of those, and more politicians set in their own beliefs and principles, to the point they're happy to face arrest for it if needs be, because they're the ones that clearly can't be bought and paid for, as standing up for the environment happens to be a crime in the eyes of some. And if that is the case, and people are going to continue to be locked up for protesting about the climate and environmental damage to this Tory party or any other party coming in, then we really are in a sorry state of affairs, aren't we? Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please leave a comment and have your say on the matter and be part of the conversation too. Meanwhile, here's another video recommendation where it isn't just the Tories being lobbied and doing deals with the oil and gas bunch, but Starmer is too, again, showing a change in the colour of the party tie isn't going to change the politics whatsoever if it gets put in place. I'll hopefully see you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.